Okay, it's 6 o'clock on October 21st. I'll call the order of the special meeting of the village board. Roll call
Bill,
here.
Berto. Here. Park,
Here.
Shampo. Here. Hosen. Here. Warner. Here. And Roscoe. Here.
And a motion to approve the agenda with the order.
So moved.
Motion by Berto,
Second.
second by Roscoe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, comments, correspondence, concerns from the public limited to 3 non-transferable minutes. Yes, sir.
My name is Bill Wegehout. I live at 10579 Hillcrest Road here in Sister Bay. And I was just wondering, I had quite a shock. Real estate tax in 2022 on my house was $5,195. This past year paid a tax of $7,196, an increase of $2,000. And when I opened up that envelope, my breath was taken away. I only am asking, do you see another $2,000 tax increase for this coming year?
So that's something we will address in the budget. I mean, give you a very short answer. I don't want to go back and forth.
Well, I know that's etched in stone.
It's
I have
zero.
never had a $2,000 anywhere in any house I've ever owned.
So the village's portion is not going to increase this year. It will be 0% increase.
We always seem to blame the tenant.
Well-
Who does not have checks and balances, and what can we do to put them into a checks and balance system?
I mean, that is a question that's beyond the village.
I understand it, but I appreciate what you people all do, but every year it just seems that that tech thing is just way out of line for their increases.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? You'll have a chance to speak about the budget here on agenda item 5 too. So if you have a question about the budget.
Me?
Yeah, Margaret, both of you.
You know I like to come up. I want to see all your beautiful faces. Hello, Village Sister Bay Board. My name is Margaret Connor again, President of SAIL Senior Advocates for Independent Living. You know us. We've been here a couple of times. You know all about SAIL. I want to share with you some things you don't know about us. We have a membership fee of $125 yearly, but those fees are only about an average of $10 a month for the people who pay it, so it's pretty low. The state of Wisconsin poverty level for 2024 for a single person is $15,600. SAIL has a policy to waive the membership fee for people at 150% of that poverty level, making it $22,590 or lower. So we would waive those at that rate or under. Here's why we're asking for funding. The poverty level in Sister Bay has doubled over the last few years. More than 50% of the population say they have trouble even making their rent or mortgage, in addition to the basic living expenses. With that in mind, we know that we are going to have to serve people and waive their membership fee. We recognize the population is changing and the poverty is a real concern, especially to seniors with limited income resources. Our membership fees need to be supplemented, and that is the primary reason why we're asking for funding to make sure that we can offset those people. People in Sister Bay can be property rich, but income poor. The only way we can assist is for us to recognize the needs of our seniors and waive the fee based upon the level of income. The fact that funding is important based upon the changing population here. The poverty level that is changing, people having difficulty meeting their rent or their mortgage. We can help them with your help from the Village of Sister Bay. Please reconsider our request to assist senior residents in our community. Thank you again for your time. I hope you'll reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy Akerly, I live in Sister Bay, and I live on North Spring Road. And congratulations on the wonderful Fall Fest. It really was very successful. It was a lot of fun. It was a great time, except on North Spring Road. Once again, we do not have any no parking signs. We do not have any one-way. That road is a conduit as people are going around the village to get back to 42. There were cars parked on both sides of our narrow little road, There was barely one lane in between that you'd have to kind of jockey around to try to avoid the pedestrians, as well as the people parking all over my lawn and on the other side of the road. So I was wondering, I don't know who's in charge of that, who puts up those wonderful temporary police order no parking signs. But I sure would appreciate next year if you would consider North Spring Road not as a place for excess parking to go, that Sister Bay, can't handle. But just maybe make it a one-way street. Or just put no parking on one side of the street. Would be greatly appreciated.
Probably makes sense for that to go to first properties and streets.
Yeah.
It's important that we remember that in a few months, not just right now, so. Trying to make sure we do. Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay, then we did have one piece of late correspondence that came in from Mike Laskowitz, who's spoken here multiple times. All right. Then on to item 5, public hearing on the 2025 budget. At 6:06 p.m., I will open the floor for the public hearing. Anybody like to speak about the 2025 budget? Yes. Yes.
Okay. Lori Hart, 10513 Cherrywood Court, Sister Bay. I'm not happy with the cost of the maintenance building or the admin building, but I see that it's necessary for our village workers to have a decent place to work at and our village future. The buildings should have taken priority before we approved a $3.3 million expense for broadband, but that's in the past. The village has promised the ice rink committee $500,000 and it's in the 2025 budget. I understand the committee received a huge grant, but I feel that $500,000 should not come out of our taxpayer monies. It's estimated to cost $84,000 a year in maintenance as well. The ice rink is great for those that will use it, but I don't feel as taxpayer I should have to pay for it. There should be a fundraiser by those who want to cover the $500,000 needed. And my next comment is, who's going to pay the annual maintenance? And is it going to be put on our parks committee, who's already, our parks and maintenance people who are already stretched pretty thin? I feel that it's a want over a need. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
It's Nancy Akers again. I looked at the budget and I was kind of shocked to see the amount that was proposed for the village hall. And I thought a lot after the last meeting that I attended about the new admin building and the need for a new admin building. We have a meeting area in the village hall for over 150 people. Why are we duplicating a large meeting area in the admin building? And we definitely need a new admin building. Don't get me wrong, I totally understand that. But why aren't we looking at something like, Mike Flood's old building? That would be a great idea. And to rent that space for all our administration, it just makes perfect sense to me. Instead of building yet another structure that can be served, the same functions can be served by things that we already have in place. That's all.
I'd like to comment.
Let's get the public hearing closed.
This is the public
Okay,
hearing.
your comment, okay, I understand.
Nancy, granted, we didn't look at Mike Flood's old office, but we did look here at the fire station. And unless we build new, we cannot have, without major remodeling, the kind of space and security that staff needs. And you talk about utilizing the village hall that can hold 150 people. That very well may be. It's not totally ADA accessible. And there is no parking. So when you have larger meetings, the building just does not function in its current state. And I know that there is a committee working on that. and that a plan has been come up. But that is a little off in the future before we can realize, utilizing that building to whatever potential that it has.
May I respond?
Yes,
There is certainly parking. There's all kinds of street parking, plus there's the parking, for the park. I don't understand why that's a problem. The other part of that is.
in
yes,
July-
it's not ADA compliant right now, and that's what I thought we were going to budget for and plan for, because it is a municipal building. That we as a town have a responsibility to bring up to code and use. And if you haven't looked at buildings like Mike Flood's, you know, talk about office space, talk about a really nice space, well-maintained, then maybe you haven't explored all of the possibilities. I understand if you looked at this place. But there are other possibilities, and I don't want to duplicate what we can already do without the expense of that large building.
it won't give us what we need. And no,
Never
no
looked at it.
current building will have the setup, the security that is required in the year 2024.
I
And
think,
have you looked at it?
I think another concern Heidi had mentioned was with the elections and moving all the material, and I think also for these meetings, Heidi's continually having to move things around. And at Mike Flood's office, I don't think we could all meet up there. I don't think there's a meeting space. So there would still be admin would be having to move things back and forth from meeting to meeting, and I think that would be difficult.
It's currently difficult. That's one of the things that we've heard from staff and from Heidi, especially with elections.
Mr. Chair, if I can comment.
Yes.
One thing that we did discuss for those of you that weren't at the meeting last week was to take another look at the admin building. Still build it, Nancy, but take another look at it and see what we could do to modify the current design. And possibly not have an atrium there, but still have a space to be able to have, you know, waiting area and also an area where, you know, the village could display anything that would need to be displayed, whether it's plans for a building or plans for a park or plans for Wiltshire, or whatever it might be. So we are taking another look at that, and we'll start that process and end it quickly, but at the Parks meeting, which is on November the 4th. But also, I believe that Patrice, you could probably comment on this in regards to the funding for Village Hall that was going to go into the SIP, correct?
Right, we talked at that meeting that, if we would put it in there for
Right.
2026,
We
the
have-
200,000 for
Yep.
the construction drawings.
In 2026, we've got something in the budget.
Something.
Yeah. $200,000 to get some drawings up for the village hall. Yeah, so it's not been forgotten. I'd like to comment on the administration building as well. So I think, we need to think about the future and, not a temporary fix. This is long time coming. We need to have a safe, secure, proper election facility. I personally think it's a little too large. I think we can cut down on the size and hopefully some of the cost. But I do think we should move forward and continue to work on getting that set for this next year. And the costs will be going up every year. The costs of administration building are going to get higher and higher with construction, and that's a problem. That's what.
Say one more thing.
Yes.
When, I know you've done a lot of planning, I know you've looked at this. But have you looked at places like Sebastopol? They seem very satisfied with their setup. Have you looked at a comparably sized building that Sebastopol has for their administration?
We looked at what our needs were. All staff was talked to, like for the, parks maintenance building. What's all the equipment that we have? How big is it? What kind of space does that require to store? I think we put on one additional bay in that building for the future. And preparing for that when that time would come. Staff was talked about on space for offices in the administration building. That there is not, other than kind of the bone of contention with most people is how large the atrium is. We are, I think I said at the last meeting, we are not building the Taj Mahal. It may look very large. And the meeting room that we're in, I don't have my notes with me right now, but this is about 1,400 square, a little over 1,400 square feet. What we're proposing in the new administration building is 1,395. It's basically the same, but what we're taking is this room, the small conference room, the storage, and putting it all into one structure. And so it seems larger than what we're actually utilizing, but that is not really the case. Now, yes, everyone will end up with their own office space in the new administration building. There's also there is a conference room there that the current building does not have, that we put in, and we put in one additional office that's home to no one but for future use, but certainly the building inspector could use that when he comes to Sister Bay and is doing his job there. So we have looked at all of that over the past couple of years and determined
And
what we need.
your intention is still to put it on Barbara's property, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned that.
Barbara's, no, on Barbara's property. She said.
Barbara Lagerquist.
Oh, okay, I thought you meant a different Barbara, sorry.
And you said that you were going to try to make it look as appropriate as possible to that beautiful farm corner?
Yeah.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. And I'm sure you looked at everything. If you approve this budget tonight, does that mean you approve the plans to go ahead with those projects?
It's just,
No,
that was approved last time we met in the capital improvement plan. And 3 million was put in for 2025.
So you're not having a public meeting per se, just about the buildings?
That was in the capital improvement plan at the.
we still have to approve the plans as a board. I mean, and the payment of it. I mean, the capital improvement says we're gonna put this out there for this year.
Right,
That's still gotta come back for review. I mean, there is going to be
we still have to
drawings that'll be
decide on,
done this month. Before it
on a
goes to
plan.
courts. So
Well,
there's,
I hear a lot of grumbling, and I think that would be so good, because then people could come and they could hear what Denise just said, and it would probably make sense to most people. So, thank you.
thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
I'd just like to add to what everyone needs to believe. Patrice have commented on the admin building. And something that Patrice mentioned is that we are, we're planning for the future. And I think it's in our best interest as a board to make this the right way, where we're not sitting here in the next 5 years thinking, oh, we should have done it this way instead. But actually, this has taken a lot of time. The last 2 years, it's been an ongoing project. I know a lot of you, have been hearing about it and reading about it. But that's because we want it done in the right way so that this building is there for the next at least 50 years. You get a good use of it. And I do understand that the current building does not even have inappropriate storage area. There's a lot of confidential information, the election stuff was brought up, all of that. There is a need for that. Now, the size of it and the cost of it or whatever has not been finally discussed. Like Nate said, we still have to review all of that. But I do believe that we do need to look into this, and like I said, it's been something that we've been talking about in the last 2 years, and not just the last 2 years. I know I've brought it up before, and the cost just keeps going up for obvious reasons every year. But it's definitely a need for our staff. They deserve a good working space, and like Patrice said, we're thinking into the future, not 10, 15, 20 years from now, but far ahead from that.
I'd like to say something else.
Yes.
So, what Laurel had to talk about, I'd like to respond to that. And I think it's very easy for anybody to pick apart certain things in the budget. I, for one, don't use the library. I have a library card, but I haven't been in the library since my nieces were young. It's not something I use. I don't go to the ice rink, I never have. But I think it's a really great thing for the community, along with the library. I never go to the beach because I work 6 days a week. So there are all kinds of amenities within this village that I personally don't use. But I think that make our quality of life. I think it makes us a community. We offer it to anyone who cares to enjoy it. And where do you draw the line? Everybody will have their favorites and things that they do use and don't want to see go away. And others, say, well, I never use it. Why should I have to pay for it? It's the same way that all of us that don't have children or our children are out of school and we pay taxes into the school. This is what we do. And as a village board, we have to look at everything within our community and find somewhat of a happy balance so that we have community, we have sense of community, and we have all those things to offer, not just for those who come to visit us, but for those who are here year round. And we have had at the last few parks meeting, maybe 3 of them, if I remember correctly, where we have had people show up talking about how they grew up at the ice rink and how important it was to them and a place for them to go and hang out with their friends in the winter when maybe there's not a lot of other things to do. And I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
Even
Can
though
I
I've
respond to
never
that?
stepped foot on the ice.
Can I just respond?
Sure.
I totally agree with you. But in the next couple of years, I don't think it's something that's as important as our admin building or the maintenance building. And that's $500,000, so if the admin is 3 million, that 500,000, in reality, you could make it 2,500,000 and put that ice rink off for a future agenda. And it's not that I'm saying, well, I don't ever ice skate, so I'm not gonna use it. I get that. But I think all of these huge budget items right now in the same 2 years is just too much for our small village to swallow after the huge tax increase we had last year. So maybe space it out in a few more years, deal with the things that our workers and our maintenance people, the village as a whole need and can use. So the entire village would use our village admin building for voting or for the board's gonna have a big project, they're gonna put up displays so they can come in and see what they are, and that's fine. And I know that construction keeps going up and up and up. I'm concerned about the ice rink maintenance, which is very expensive. I don't know who's gonna do it because I don't know what that plan is. I'm not on that committee. And I'm not saying don't do it. I think they should try and find another way to raise that $500,000 to kind of offset the $500,000 that we need to use for the admin building. That's all.
The Friends of the Ice Rink requested money from the village so they could kick off. And the people that would donate through the community foundation need to know that this is a priority to the village and makes donors then want to donate to that project. If the Friends of the Ice Rink don't meet their goal, the money doesn't get spent because there's nothing to spend it on,
Okay.
or it gets prolonged.
So, yeah, they, when they approached us, they were proposing to the community foundation, the Door County Community Foundation, to work with them to help with fundraising. And the community foundation, you know, many people approach them, but they don't work with everybody. You have to be very, very confident that a particular project's going to work. And, in order to do that, they had to be, what helped enormously was that the village was willing to do a match, essentially. If they raised 500, the village would give 500. Or you mentioned that they got a huge grant. They did not get a huge grant. They're going to apply for a grant. As far as $84,000 to manage it, I don't think there's been anything determined in terms of what it's going to cost to manage it. And managing is a lot of different things. Or I'm sorry, you said to maintain it. So I'm certain that that hasn't been determined.
I thought that they received that grant.
What grant was that?
I was under the understanding they got $2.5 million grant to do the ice rink.
No, they haven't gotten.
I'm not sure. We applied for a $2.5 million grant three or 4 years ago. And didn't get it.
What were they congratulated on recently for getting?
The Sister Bay Ice Rink?
501(c)(3) or something like that.
Well, they're going to establish themselves as a nonprofit. If that's what you mean, but
I don't know.
establishing yourself as a nonprofit, first of all, it's quite a process. And they're still, I believe, in the process of going through that. However, it doesn't mean that you establish yourself as a nonprofit and then you get a grant. Granted, no pun intended, that oftentimes, you know, a facility like that, and by the way, most ice rinks around the state, and for that matter, even in Minnesota and other places, are nonprofits. And so it helps to facilitate that, right? So they are in the process, the committee is in the process of getting that, and there's no guarantees, because as I said, it's quite a process. But no, they did not get a $2.5 million grant. No, never. And again, they're still working on what it's gonna cost to maintain it and manage it. And that would also be within the purview of parks and the village board, because that's a budgetary thing. And they would need to present that, and that would be, we would have to determine if that's something that we wanted to budget. Because we already, I don't know, what do we give the ice rink right now? 25 grand?
Yes.
Yeah, right now we spend $25,000 a year on the ice rink. It was open one day last year. Because we don't have any coils. We can't produce ice.
We don't have coils, we don't have covering is the other thing.
Yeah.
Or the covering is good too. as
Right.
well.
But I would say though that when you look at our population growth, we're now 1,205 people in the village of Sister Bay. And when you look at the growth and where it's coming from, the most growth that we got are children under the age of 10. And if you are a parent, aunt, uncle, something of a child under the age of 10, you know that it's not just ice skating, right? Because the idea would be that there would be something, Lily can certainly speak to that relative to soccer, basketball, et cetera. But for us to think about the future and think about the growth that we need to invest in the future. And that's young families that want to work here, that want to live here. And again, despite all of the criticism, Sister Bay has spent more money than any municipality, except maybe Sturgeon Bay, although I think we spent as much as they did providing reasonable housing in the county of Door, period. Because we have sewer and water, and we can do that. Nobody else has. So if you want, well, affordable housing, different conversation, but the point is that we need younger families to come here, work here, educate their children here, and stay here. Again and again and again, because we're into fourth generations of families that own homes now.
Yeah.
And not own homes and businesses, beg your pardon, but that's what we're investing in, not just an ice rink and
Yeah.
lots of other things. That's why we spent the millions of dollars and deferred a lot of the things we're doing now. We spent millions of dollars on the waterfront and deferred everything else.
I have
And
a
that's what
question about
everybody else
the
is doing
ice
now
rink.
that we did 10 years ago. Yeah.
if they get raised $500,000, we pay $500,000. Why can't that be shared with Liberty Grove and even Bailey's Harbor, Ephraim? They're gonna be using it too. Why does Sister Bay have to take it?
We could certainly ask them.
And that's the Friends of Gibraltar's job, is to reach out to other communities, not the Village of Sister Bay. And just to be clear, because it keeps, it's brought up a lot, the ice rink is not a project of the Village of Sister Bay. There's a committee, a nonprofit committee called Friends of Gibraltar. They've been working on getting this done
Friends
for
of the
years.
Ice Rink.
Sorry, Friends of the Ice Rink, thinking basketball.
Yeah.
Friends of the Ice Rink, that have been trying to get this done, and they have reached out to the Village of Sister Bay because we already have a place for the ice rink in the village, and that's why they've reached out for our support. But that doesn't mean that they can't or are not going to reach out to our surrounding communities.
Do you know how much they've raised so far?
I do not know, I'm not on their committee, but we've talked about it in the last like 3 or 4, I mean, most of our parks meetings this year. And we as a committee, on the Parks Committee have also been clear with them, you know, it shouldn't also become, I don't wanna see a burden, but all the work shouldn't be on the village side, you know, they're doing a lot of work to get this done and figure things out. And I want to say something, being a mother of a young child and involved in sports, I run the youth soccer program up here, and right now we're involved in basketball. The amount of parents that volunteer to run sports, to coach sports, to help with concessions, to donate their time for these events is unbelievable. So I don't have a doubt that when this ice rink gets done, the community is going to come together and help either raise money or volunteer their time, or whatever needs to be done to keep it running, because that's the community we are. So I'm very supportive of this project.
So,
Skip, we're 2630 Woodland Drive. And I appreciate you as volunteers, the time you put into this job on the board and the fiduciary responsibility that you have to this whole village. So I hope that, you know, as you keep working forward on capital plans and budgets, you're keeping that in mind. I realize that there's a strong balance between meeting needs today and the future, but also not building something that's so grandiose that it competes with something in Green Bay or Milwaukee or Chicago. There's a real fine balance between use, revenue, and need. In kind of a quick look through the capital budget and then the general budget, there seem to be some really significant inconsistencies that I see. And Denise, I know you already talked about some of the intangibles, and those are always hard to put dollar values on in meeting needs of the community. But for instance, a new marina building and the dollars that go along with that for restrooms and lounge and that, yes, it's a great activity to have. You draw some more people here maybe, but right now the marina only brings in a couple 100,000, or 300,000.
and I just want to address that one right away. That money does not come from taxpayers. That is because the marina is an enterprise fund, the marina pays for that. So that burden, I understand your question, that comes up a lot. I
I'm
wanna
just
make sure
seeing
you
it
know
on the
that.
capital improvement.
It is included in the
Budget.
capital improvement because it does get held against us for debt purposes, but actually the marina does pay for that.
But then I see also there's transfers of funds from that fund to other funds within the village. And while I don't know all the details, I'm not looking to get into the weeds on that right now. Just at a high level, I see that. For instance, on the ice rink, and I realize now that there's, you know, a nonprofit group working to help do that also. But when you talk about a new concession stand that brings in 3,000, 4,000 a year, there seems to be a big inequity in some of that spending. So I just kind of point those out as things that seem a little out of whack. Another one is roads within the village, right? You know, there's a significant dollar amount in this capital budget, but it looks like that mostly is roads and the development of this new area. And the 10-year road plan is about $4 million. But it looks like the next few years, the village will only have about 100,000 going toward roads. And there seems to be a significant shortfall there. They're gonna have to come back to the community for to maintain the roads. And I just wonder, even on roads, you know, they have a given life expectancy. Does the village work with a plan for rotating replacement on that mileage of road? Or is it become just a, oh shoot, the road's gone, we've got to redo it?
There is a road plan. Is.
I mean, I saw the 10-year projection in the budget for that, but it doesn't match the revenues that we addressed for it in the next couple of years at least. There's, you know, $3.5 million shortfall there.
So I can address the road plan. The road plan in there is a little outdated. So what we have been doing is we've been using our, Premier Resort area tax to help pay for the roads. So as long as that money is coming in, we cycle it through and do roads every year. The roads have been neglected for a long time. So there's a lot of roads that need repair.
And I appreciate that because I came from a community where they had 30 years of catch up to do. And it's expensive to do,
It is
but they did
expensive,
finally put it on a ongoing rotation. So it just became part of the regular maintenance and budget.
right? At the current time, what we're trying to do is chip away at the really bad roads so we can get on a cycle. We are doing maintenance on all of them right now as we see potholes, we're filling them. Trying to fill the cracks, trying to do whatever we can to prolong the life of the roads. But the roads are something that has risen to the surface with that crack tax that we get. And we're able to make the money go further because of that. So we're trying to get on a cycle, but in the meantime, chipping away at the worst ones right now until we can get to that point.
And please don't take me wrong. I'm not trying to come down on this board. I'm appreciative of the hours you put in. And these were just things that in a quick look that seem kind of out of whack. So thank you.
I mentioned that right because that's a question we get an awful lot.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
But it's a good question. I'm new to the board and I did thank you for the answer, but you're nodding your head. Why are you nodding your head?
Because you're all making good points.
Okay, so are you the guy that helps us put a schedule in place?
So I'm the guy that helps you determine if
Wait,
there's roads
would
you want to
introduce
tackle.
yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Enrico. I'm with Barrett, so we're the municipal advisor. We have kind of counterparts. So Justin Fisher, who comes to meetings, he is particularly the banker. So when you guys are going through kind of debt issues or potentially looking at how you're going to finance things, he works with a team and kind of comes together and looks at, okay, what makes the most sense? Do you go after bonding? Do you look at, you know, how long should a loan be? Looking at various different options. My role is a little different. I'm more on the consulting side, so I help mainly the staff and the board kind of through the capital improvement process and look at, okay, how do you prioritize your items? What are those things you're looking at? And then this year they asked if I would kind of assist with the budget with some of the new transition. So that's where I'm kind of same thing, learning and hearing all the different things and taking notes and kind of priorities of things to look at in the future. But it's kind of my role in all this.
Well, you were a diligent.
And I was an administrator, so I was the city manager for Platteville for 3 years. We were 105 years behind on our road improvements, so know your pain. I was in Marshall for 3 years, kind of very similar, you know, issues and problems. And then originally from the Green Bay area, so I started my career in Hobart as the assistant to the administrator. So I know the whole state of Wisconsin and various kind of issues and everything else that you guys are dealing with.
Well, yeah, I mean, with everybody's budget, you chip away the big stuff first, and then you said, are we gonna start to put a process in place or a schedule in place for the others, or we can't do that until we chip away at,
Well, we have
we
the
chip away
current,
at Highway 32, that's for
the
sure.
current list.
And Mill,
Of all the roads and what their condition is.
Yeah.
And I believe that's supposed to be updated every year. The Mill Road Triangle is, slated, I think we're putting $1 million towards that.
This year and $1 million next year.
that's this year.
Yep.
You know,
Maple
where
Shore.
Mill Road Triangle is, right, the one that's, everybody
Maple
knows?
Bluffs, it's Maple Bluff side.
Behind
Parkview.
Husby's.
Yeah.
We're behind Lure.
Pretty rough shape.
so we did a portion of it. And now it's the rest of it to the west and up the hill, right?
And that is by far our worst one because we have storm water. We have lateral issues under the road. So we have compacted laterals, we have very, very old laterals in there because that's the original part of the village. So we're tackling that big chunk first. That's the one you're gonna see for the next 2 years where the majority of the road money is gonna go.
Yeah, I saw there was a significant part that went there and also to the look like roads for the new development where the maintenance facility and other stuff would be, which you have to build the roads here, so. I mean, I
We'll
get
see.
it.
Yeah. And that'll be for future, Skip. And, Julia's written a grant that only covers infrastructure, the program, whether we get it or not. But it's a very nice grant, if you can get it.
They only give 50 in the United States, we're not counting.
Well,
But we're
but
trying.
we can, yeah, so the smallest amount you get is $1 million. And no, I think that the least you can get is 7 million or something. It's a big grant.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Nancy?
One more thing, and then I promise that's the last one. Maybe. Yeah, well, two teachers, you know how they are. I have to say, every time I come to hear the board discuss anything, I'm so impressed. Because you do your homework. Sister Bay is one of the few places that I know of that is attracting young families. And I mean, that's remarkable. It is because of what we're doing with housing, because of what we're doing with things like the ice rink and the different facilities. And to balance that against a budget that is gazillions of dollars with 1,200 residents. I don't know how you're doing it. I don't know how you're doing it. I just want to express my gratitude. You know, I come and nitpick and ask questions, but what you're doing is remarkable. And often unheralded. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else speak? Is there anyone online?
We have one person online. I'm not sure if they'd like to speak or not. I'm still.
See, we give them a chance here, so. Okay, and I guess, you know what, I'd like to say one more thing to your point. Well, we don't have this is a rough plan for the ice rink. This is setting dollar amounts aside, and I think it's really important that we keep in mind some of the sentiment you have. Okay, well, what is the ongoing cost gonna be? Because I think that's a bigger issue to me than the one-time cost. I understand the one-time cost is large, but those ongoing costs will really add up. And I think that we just need to be mindful of that as we come up with a plan. And as this comes back to the board, because once it's done here, once it gets passed tonight, if it does get passed, it's still gonna have to come back to the parks, it's gonna come back to the board, and there's gonna be other chances, and I would encourage you to, and I know you'll be out there, I have faith in that, to give your input, but, I do hear what you're saying. Okay, at 6:42, I will close the public hearing. Okay, on to 6, discussion and action for adopting the 2025 budget. So, Adam, would you like to?
Sure, I can, you got something planned, Julie, or do you want me to take it?
Go ahead, Ann.
Okay, so pretty much, as I kind of mentioned, I'm Enrico with Barrett. I was brought in to kind of assist the staff in working on the budget. And I think as kind of the public mentioned, you know, kudos to the board for you guys and obviously all of the staff. You know, being an administrator, I know the budget, there are some long nights, some long hours, and a lot of discussions that go into putting this together. But primarily my involvement was kind of working with the staff and understanding what were kind of the priorities of the board. And I think the number one ask is obviously from hearing from the public and the concerns about obviously with reassessments, what that did to all of everybody's, you know, property values and how that impacts taxes. One of the directions that came from staff was looking at, could we put together a budget that essentially was a, you know, frozen or flat increase in the mill rate. So what you essentially have in front of you is a budget that is putting together where it is proposing essentially exactly that. It is a 0%, you know, it's proposed as a 0% increase. So what is happening is there's about, looking at the overall revenues to try to make this as simple as possible. Overall from kind of 2024 to 2025, there's about a 1% increase overall in revenues that is being projected. And then when you look at the expenses, there's about 4%. So when you kind of take that into account, you're looking roughly at about a 3% overall increase in the budget. So how we played with that obviously plays into a lot of the conversations that have been talked about with the growth that you have seen in the community. So with obviously levy limits and net new construction, that allows you to essentially have a buffer in your budget that allows you to increase with growth. So because your equalized value and assessed values have increased, your assessed value in 2023 was about $795 million. In 2024, it's being proposed at $804 million. So what that allows you to do is essentially look at, okay, can you absorb kind of that 3% in that amount and continue to keep your rate where it is? And that is essentially, kind of to summarize it as best as we can, that's where it's coming out. So what is being proposed right now is that the levy would be $3,410,241. And when you take that against your assessed value for 2024 of $804,565,200, that essentially gets you at the exact same mill rate, which is essentially the 0.00423861. Which when you multiply that by 1,000 per every $100,000 of assessed value, that essentially is going to get you to about $4.23, which is what it was last year. So what is in front of you essentially is a 0% increase. This takes into account everything that was done at the last meeting with looking at kind of the capital improvement plan and putting that in there. And again, anything in your capital improvement plan is, as it's been alluded to by the president, is going to have to come back to the board for consideration. But that's kind of what this is showing. So that just kind of gives you the rough kind of update of everything that's in here. Obviously, if there's specifics that you want to go through, Julie, myself, and Vlad are all here to kind of answer any of those questions that you might have.
I'd like to just add to that, for people that are concerned about the taxes, the tax rate or the mill rate is actually $1.65 less than what it was 5 years ago. So yes, it seems like you're spending a lot of money, but your mill rate is actually lower. Stayed the same as last year, but it was lower than 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and 5 years ago. So I think we're in the right direction of handling the money.
But because of the reassessment, it doesn't really apply.
Well, it can be looked at that way, but for people that are looking at their per thousand and what that tax rate is, it is lower.
I think what I hear Ken grumble back there, and I think how most people see it is, what is the actual, what am I paying in taxes? And that's what we're keeping flat here. I think the mill rate is very, very low, especially with that massive change in valuation.
Well, you're seeing about a 1% increase in the actual check revenue for the village portion of the taxes.
So we're not actually, as far as the property taxes, we're not going to increase the mill rate on there. So there's new construction that's going to be.
Because of the increase in assessed value across the area, it's about 1%. According to the numbers he's got.
Yeah.
So the actual owner will be paying more because their values went up.
Well, everybody had, no. Everybody's value went up last year. The 1% increase is because of new construction that wasn't taxed.
Okay.
So you should pay exactly the same to the village. What any other taxing entity does is out of our control.
Right. I get that.
And I didn't know if Bill was referencing his total tax bill or just to that, can't believe it was just a share to the village.
I think he was referencing the share that went to the technical college.
I think he was referring back to.
About
the
its whole
total
thing,
share.
which included NWTC.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So all the taxing entities increased 2,000.
Right.
Okay.
In regards to the debt service summary on page, I think 35, it's a chart. But I just wanted to confirm, because I did ask Julie, that 2024, well, even 25 gone down, however, just a reminder that the marina and wastewater treatment plant are both enterprise funds. So if you were to look, if you're looking at the chart, it's blue.
You said page 35?
I don't know, I hole punched it. Correct, I don't know. It looks like this.
Okay.
Hold on, let me see what page it's on. Probably,
I think.
is it 55? Hold on.
Maybe
55.
There we go, 55, sorry about that. So when you look at, so it's either blue, orange, or yellow. Orange is marina and the yellow is wastewater. But if you look at the blue, which is the general fund, then you look at the debt service from 24 to 25, and then 25 to 26, 26 to 20, it goes out through 28. By the way, I don't know if that heading should say 2023 annual budget, maybe it should say 25.
Oh, that's an error.
Okay. But either way, I understood it, starts with 23. But the general fund debt service is down. We want to still keep an eye on it, close eye on it. A lot of the comments that we get from folks that come and folks that whether they have a background in finance or anything else is about debt. And God knows we're all familiar with it personally, you know, it makes you nervous. So, just know that we do have an eye towards it. That conversation started even last year as well. But it does look like the general fund took up, and I was really looking future beyond 25.
Mhm.
Because beyond 25 is when some of the stuff that's in SIP right now for 25 may not happen, it's gonna move into 26.
If you look in the past, though, we have come a long ways in terms of our percentage of debt utilized. Yeah, I know you were here for that, Denise, and we are in so much better position financially as a village.
When we did the waterfront, were we at 78% of our legal borrowing capacity, or was it in low 80s? Anybody remember?
I don't know.
Okay.
It was when Tasha started, I mean, I
Right.
don't think there was no headroom was what.
There was, but it was minuscule.
You were in the low 80s.
Low 80s, okay.
Aside from the person that apparently helped us manage our way out of it.
Well, he was a big piece of it, yeah.
Okay. So what's the benchmark for a municipality? You know, you have industries, right? Different industries have different benchmarks for things. So for a municipality like ours, what's a benchmark?
For how much debt you should have compared to,
Like 80, we know isn't good.
well, yeah, so I mean, generally, so the statute allows you to have 5% of your equalized value in debt. Now, obviously, you would never want to be there unless it is, you know, mission critical. Now, are there some municipalities that are there? Absolutely. You know, you actually have a debt policy on your books, so I believe you do not go more than 75% is kind of the rule that you guys have kind of used as a benchmark. So now again, that's a policy. So that's something where depending on what's going on with the village, as you kind of alluded to, if you don't have the choice, you're not going to exceed it. But that is generally when we're talking about, you know, specifically the village as a rating, or when you go out for your bonds. Within the last 2 years, because of all the work that I think the president alluded to and Denise and everybody has done in this community, is you have been upgraded the last 2 years with your rating. So in 2023, you got graded to what is called an AA3. And in 2024, this year, you got upgraded to an AA2. For a municipality of about 1,200 people, that is I'll say it, that's an incredible rating to have for a village of your size. So, and what they look at is they look at everything. So I know, as you alluded to, Louise, there's questions that everybody has about the debt. That is taken into this rating. So they specifically even call that out and say, you know, 2023, I think I have it right here, I can say it. So in 2023, this is Moody's who upgraded you to an AA3. You know, they indicated here the village's overall leverage is moderate and will likely increase following some major capital plans that will require additional debt in the next 2 years. Despite the expected increases, overall leverage will likely remain relatively moderate compared to the growing local economy and improved financial profile. The village primary credit strengths are balanced by a local economy relying on tourism and a relatively limited scale of operations. So that's where you even have your rating agencies that are looking into kind of the overall plan. And those are the questions that get asked. So they have looked at, you know, considering everything that you've been talking about, from your public works building to your admin building to the broadband that you've been doing. And those are all factors that are obviously increasing your credit rating, because you are, as you kind of alluded to, you're planning ahead. You know, you're planning for having the ability to have broadband. You're planning to have updated facilities, which then attract your workforce, which then attract people to come here. So they look at that, you know, they look at all of the tourism information as far as everybody who's coming to the, you know, your municipality. So that's all taken into account. So again, you know, your debt is, we usually, as your financial advisor, do not want to see you go higher than that kind of, that 75% is kind of our benchmark where we start to look at that. But it depends. There are some that are obviously higher than that. And there's some that are lower. And as you said, from where you were to where you are now, you were in a much better position. And we have that kind of showcasing as you look, when Justin comes in and does those presentations, he shows you that kind of debt capacity chart. And it shows that as you're kind of moving on, that you continue to gain capacity because, we're using very conservative numbers in there. We're using about a 2% increase in your equalized value in your rates. You've had, sometimes you're 8%, sometimes you're 13. So that obviously plays into it, but we always try to be very conservative when we give you those calculations.
Any other questions on that discussion?
So. I think I said it before, but I don't know if I said it right. And if it was last week or 2 weeks ago when we had that SIP meeting, I can't remember that either. Ask me something about the budget from 10 years ago, I'll remember that. So we passed the capital improvement plan at that meeting. And we cannot change that anymore.
I don't know how you would have to, I believe you'd have to adopt a new resolution on that.
Okay,
And
because
it's
there was a
gonna-
resolution, okay.
And it's gonna impact this budget. And I think we'd have to advertise. And would we have to advertise the budget again?
What if it didn't impact the budget?
I think then you would just need a new resolution to do it.
Why?
In particular thinking,
What do you think?
we want to review it for next year?
I was thinking, and this will make no one happy. But that's not my goal in life, is to make people happy. That's somebody else's job. With what Julie talked about, that when we purchased and annexed the Waterquist property, and according to our zoning, and we should have had sewer and water come to the corner of that property, or someplace on that property, I would imagine the corner. And I am, no matter what happens with the redesign of the administration building, I don't know what it's going to look like. I still don't know what that might cost compared to the first drawing that we had to do. I don't know which plan this board will eventually want to move forward with. And because of that being a couple $100,000 just to get it according to our zoning code there. Now, extending it down the road, I can understand to where we want it placed.
Down Woodcrest. You mean.
Down Woodcrest, past the farm or whatever, that would be a cost of the project. I guess I don't want to be caught by saying, okay, we put 3 million in the SIP, but now it might not be enough. And I know all of that can maybe be determined, but we really only do capital outlay at budget time. We may start talking about it, in the summer, but we don't adopt it until this time. And I guess I just didn't necessarily know if I wanted a whole year to go by. If something were to happen and the dollar amount is more than that. Granted, it has
To
no,
extend sewer and water, you mean, or just for
just
the
the
admin?
whole
and capital?
project, but because of that, and Julie's saying that was a couple of $100,000 at our last meeting.
Yeah.
That should have been done. And I said at that meeting that I didn't know that should be pitted against, our new building and what we're planning for. So I just wanted to know if there was if we can change it now, if anybody wants to change it now, or just wants it to leave the same, I just wanted to give ourselves some cushion. Knowing that that was one of the things that,
So from a procedure perspective, if we wanted, we would have to change the SIP for that. Which means we'd have to have that an agenda item. I mean, this is close enough to budget, we can probably talk about it, but it's not something we can change tonight. So we'd have to potentially put that on a future agenda and then
I mean,
discuss it.
I just wanted to have a conversation and see how anybody felt about it.
Well, are our choices to A, take 200 grand out of something else? B, make the SIP bigger? I guess I only have A and B. Like, are those our choices, or because I don't even know if we can take that out of the budget for admin? For the admin bill.
I think that's where it is right now, right?
It's
It
nowhere.
will
right now.
come out of the admin budget.
Well, it's kind of nowhere.
It's nowhere, so.
It's nowhere, but the reality is, because it is nowhere, it's gonna come out of that admin building, which means what you can spend on the admin building is 200,000.
Well, we
So
don't know how much the admin building's gonna cost to begin,
Right.
you don't know at this point.
So this is the time that I realized that we did that. But I didn't want to wait a year to have that conversation if we thought that was a good idea, or if we think that's a terrible idea and we just leave it. I just wanted to have the conversation to see how the board felt about it.
Well,
My
from a
feeling-
reality check, if we wanted to do the work, when's the first time we could even think about doing the work?
The admin, well, the house should be on public sewer and water already.
Oh. Okay,
So the village, hate to say it, but the village is in violation of their own ordinances.
correct, right. So, I mean, when can we do the work? Is what I mean, does that drive our decisions? Like, when can we actually do that? work?
We would start with the engineering, as soon as the funds are available, because we can't expend the money until we have that, so
Yeah.
January 1st, you would do the engineering. It won't take very long, because you're not running it that far.
Yeah.
And then we would bid for the actual installation in spring.
Oh, it could happen, but it could happen easily, 25. Okay.
It should, if we're telling other people to hook up to sewer and water, we should be doing it. Do you have any thoughts on that? A $200,000 unexpected expense?
So your capital improvement plan, the keyword I'll say with that is it's a plan. So it does fall back to any decision. So right now you have a $3 million cost in there. That is your budget. So essentially that's what you're using to kind of set your barometer. If it comes more than that, that's where then you have to make a choice. So right now you're looking at adopting a budget that essentially is saying you have a $3 million project, you're going to bond for that $3 million. If it's more than that, you then have to make a decision as a board into what you want to do.
At that time.
At that time. So you don't have to, it's the same thing with the budget. It's just like when you have something in your budget and all of a sudden you go over, you have to make a decision. So your options essentially become a couple of things. One is you can do a budget amendment in your budget, where essentially you would then increase the
No.
expenditure.
No, that's not happening.
Okay, so that's one option you can do.
No,
The other option then is you have to decide. So either you're going to find that money somewhere. So either as the board, you have to make the decision that you're going to use reserves. You're essentially not going to do something in either the budget or in the CIP. Or your other option is we would model whatever that increase is. Can you take that on in that borrowing? Now, when you're talking $200,000, that's not going to cause your loan payments to decrease, increase that drastically. So, if you're talking $200,000, that's probably something where we would model that in and see what really that does. When you get to the 500,000 to $1 million range, that's when we would have to have some conversations, because now you're talking about your principal and interest payments are obviously going to be higher. But those are kind of your options. It's really, you'd be looking at, if there is, it's not in your budget, you got to find it somewhere. So either you're reducing a project or essentially you're giving the approval to go into your fund balance reserves, that's what they're there for, to essentially cover that.
or we can just leave it the way that it is, and now that I've shared this with the board, and we could just tackle it when we get real numbers. And make the decision then, but. Okay. That's all right too. but.
Thank you.
I have a question for the finance committee, because I am not on the committee, and I am thrilled that we're not gonna be going over budget, that we're not going to be raising the taxes more from last year. But I would just like to know, for my general information, what was turned down, cut, whatever, to get to this point? What did you have to say no?
A
no?
lot.
Yeah,
A lot.
I'd like to know what.
Most of it came out of, the parks budget. Because, to put in the $500,000 for the ice rink, we had to take out $500,000 on things that were slated for, parks and some other things. So, and I'm not gonna remember it all, so I'll probably need some help, but we had $50,000 in wayfinding signage, and we pushed that out. There
What's
was,
wayfinding signage?
like the library that way,
Oh, okay.
yeah, throughout the whole entire
$50,000.
village.
And a project like that, honestly, for a village our size, will cost $500,000.
It's really gonna push out the project a year further. It's not like it was gonna happen next year. No,
Right.
It's not.
We were starting to save for it,
Yeah.
and
Okay,
now we're just starting to save later, and it might not make the budget next year.
How long has it been? I mean, it's
Either.
been in there quite some time.
Yeah,
It's got-
it has.
keeps
10
getting
years.
pushed.
Probably.
Yeah.
So there was, another vehicle that the Parks Department wanted to replace, and we told them, you get to replace one. Pick which one you want. So I think it's the 2000 Ford, so it's 24 years old, 25, soon to be 25 years old.
A lot of it came from the fire station trailer, that woodland trail. Instead of moving forward with a lot of the work on that, we just limited it to the wetland delineation and some preliminary work, with majority of work on that trail happening next year.
That was 345,000.
Yeah, that's what that last year we had also pushed back because it was like
Right.
400,000.
Right, it was 400,000, I think, for 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's been pushed back.
Looking at my notes from an old meeting.
Right there, I think you're almost up to $500,000. It was.
There were some other smaller, maybe $10,000 items or whatever, they all weren't real big. But that we got to the 500, and many things we decided to just push forward a year. And so that's gonna be, if you noticed in here, especially, I think you would have seen it more in, the CIP that we talked about last time. That, the capital levy for, the Parks Department, was relatively small this year. About 125,000, I think it was, but next year it's like 300,000 or 400,000, if I remember. And so we will have to deal with that. And that's why you have a CIP. You feel where you're at, what's a priority, what's come up. People have to make decisions, and you do some, you push off some to try to just make it all work out.
There are some small things too, contracted services, equipment rental, a little bit here and there.
Right,
Also.
right, because that was mostly just in capital improvement for the 500,000 that we needed.
Yeah, this is public works.
But then the parks budget actually did go down from other cuts.
Yeah, Eric did a good job. I mean, when he first presented to us, it was relatively flat, but we cut it a little bit more.
And we just, I won't speak for anybody else, go through it with a fine tooth comb. Cause I've been in finance a really long time.
okay. And then, we said no to the sale people. How much money were they asking for?
$10,000. And so if we, I have that still that we haven't discussed, and
Okay.
they left.
Yeah.
I think it's, what they're doing, is valid. I feel kind of bad, but I don't know where to pull $10,000 from. We gave it to them last year, to the seed money to begin. I think they're a great organization. But unless somebody can point to where we can pull that from, so we don't increase.
I think we felt like we gave them some money to get them going. I don't know that we knew that this might be, and I'm not suggesting it will be, but that it would be an
Annually,
annual thing. It's right or wrong, you know?
I mean, just, and one of the things I thought about too was that, you know, the Historical Society that we've given $5,000 to forever.
For 25 years now.
And never increased, and finally they said, you need to give us more, and we increased that, to their request at 15.
Yeah, it took us a long time to get them there. Yeah. So that's right or wrong, that was the thinking. Like, I think it was unexpected. Doesn't mean that $5,000 is a lot of money. No, probably not.
I think the issue is those, if you do that 5,000, then what's the other thing there? When you start pulling one thing off, it starts unraveling a bit. I mean, there's part of me that says, okay, well, we can take this from unassigned funds, and we can do it, but once we do that, then we start tagging on, okay, well, we should do this thing too, this thing too, this thing too. Now we're not talking about 5,000 or 10,000, we're talking about 50 or 100,000. And it is really a slippery slope once you start pulling money out of unassigned funds, because that is really bad fiscal policy. To say, okay, well, I want to add this in here, so I'm just gonna take that out of the kitty.
Well, right, and we're already doing that. We made that decision, you know, to have the new contract with McMahon. You know, that's coming out of undesignated balance fund.
And I guess that I look at the difference with that is,
I'm saying it's a good thing
I know, but that's
that
just
we
a,
have it.
but we're not gonna do that every year. That's not an ongoing expense.
Right.
But it can't be an ongoing expense, where this is something, if we start to do something, it's an annual funding item.
I would say that too, we can do it in other ways, and I think we have started to do that in other ways, and that is provide reasonable housing. And so, I think that, and forgive me, I forget the name of the person, of the woman that's come back twice now to talk to us, but,
Margaret Connor.
she had said that the property rate in Sister Bay has doubled. And currently, they consider it to be based on the data, $22,000 a year. She didn't mention it from what year to what year or how much, and that's, who wants to argue about that? But I do think that the Shoals has accommodated, I know they have, you know, those kinds of, the housing gap that we have for folks that are probably have income in that range, and it doesn't, and we also intend to continue to do that. We're working hard on trying to figure out what we should do at Wiltsey, and that will include that. So we're doing it in that way. Good like we're trying to, you know. We're on the
And it's
defensive,
a
and we're trying to make
conversation
up
that we
the
can
reason
have
why we
again.
said no.
Next year, it's a conversation that we can have again next year when, next June, July, when we 6, 7 short months from now, when we start it all over again.
What we didn't ask, and we should ask when they come back again, is how many members they have. And what we're doing to try to, because I believe that the membership is not just Sister Bay, and this is not, well, it's not, you have to just be Sister Bay. It's like, I'm just wondering about their growth, their business plan, you know, and they're certainly more than capable of. Let's talk about that again, and changing lanes a little bit. I think it's time that the ice rink committee come back and give us an update. So they've had a couple more meetings. Maybe we get that in the first quarter, January or something of 2025. We have one more meeting left, right? I think 1 or 2 for this year. 2. So we give them a little bit of a heads up and want to see something.
Okay, any further discussion? Motion in order
So moved.
What's the motion say?
to adopt the
Resolution.
resolution for budget. Motion by Bertle, second by Nelson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, motion to adjourn will be in order. then.
Well, before we finish, just for the benefit of the audience, because I do think it's important to let them know what our process will be next. So we are meeting again when? Next board meeting,
Next board meeting is
November 19th.
November 19th. And is that the official adoption of, am I understanding? We just adopted, so the November 19th meeting will just be regular business. Correct. Is that correct? Okay. Okay, we'd encourage anybody to come or zoom in at any time. It makes a
Always.
difference. We miss you, Ken. We'd like you to come every time. Uh-huh.
We'd like you to come sit at the big table up
Yeah,
front.
Ken. Why don't you come back and join us? And Skip, you can join us in another way. Nancy, we know you're coming. We don't even have to ask. I'm just kidding. All right, I guess, so moved.
Second.
motion by House, second by Roscoe, all in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
You're adjourned.